Not in Latin America. In Latin America, you know, all the evangelists were pro-Pinochet in my country.
Yes.
So
Well, but also, sorry, we can have this discussion later. I mean, I'll just point out in Latin America, you're right about evangelicals, but also there has been, of course, a strong left-wing Catholic tradition in Brazil.
minority.
Yeah, but it also, in some ways, is an oppositional.
Yes.
I'm curious about why you gave up the villa in Italy to move to Los Angeles, of all places. And secondly, as a good American, why I shouldn't immigrate to Canada. Is there any hope?
Well, let your heart speak for you there. You're just saying, why did I give up my villa in Italy? And as a good American, what's to prevent him from emigrating to Canada? I said, well, just follow your heart in that one. I gave up the villa for the simple reason that I now have a titanium knee. It's quite attractive. It lights up at night. And whenever I go through, Homeland Security, it sounds like Christmas at Notre Dame Cathedral. So I too spread religious joy, but only musically. I don't know if the Canadians are going to take all of us. I mean, New Zealand, which was always a good refuge, I thought, is very, very irritable on the subject of Americans coming. We're not terribly loved and admired in the world, thanks to our press, our leaders, our wars. And I think we're going to find difficult places to go to. On the other hand, who knows, there may be an airfield already there. Central Asia is filled with American bases. Soon, Azerbaijan, how do you pronounce it? All those places that end in stan. Azerbaijan, that's right. The Bishop of Ravello is also Bishop of Azerbaijan and Armenia, and 2 other countries there, sent there by John Paul II. So he speaks all the languages as well.
Thank you.
What event would you say gave rise to the national security state, and how do you think we might see the fall of that state?
What gave rise to the national security state in which we uncomfortably live, and what will happen, what can be done? It began in the late 40s with Harry Truman, who was a gallant little fellow, and everybody sort of thought, isn't he plucky? But he didn't know anything about foreign affairs. Fortunately for him, unfortunately for us, a corporation lawyer called Dean Acheson, who was very brilliant, was his Secretary of State. And Acheson was representing, the banks and the usual interests in New York City, Wall Street, and so on. And suddenly, under the pretext, because the Depression had not ended until war came and we had full employment. 1940, which was a terrible year for the Allies, Franklin Roosevelt put $8 billion into rearming the United States, and that was the end of unemployment. And then, of course, there were 13 million of us who went into the military. And suddenly, with war, there was peace in the land. They suddenly realized that was a wonderful way to run things. Why not just always have a little war? So, you see, the Russians are coming. And Stalin, who was certainly no great charmer, but he wasn't going anywhere. We locked him up in that icebox up there, and we threw the key away. He expected, after Yalta and after his conversations with Roosevelt, who charmed him. And Roosevelt saw no reason why the Soviet Union couldn't be a perfectly normal, rather large country with which we could do business. Acheson and the sort of right-wing, the rich Republicans, the ones who do not want to have anything to do with this current regime, with their foreign policy outfits, they got together and said, well, you know, we've got to arm ourselves against communism internally and externally. So we began to arm. Then Harry Truman insisted we have loyalty oaths for everybody who worked for the government, including janitors in elementary schools. Everybody from the members of the cabinet on to anybody with a post of any sort of conspicuousness in a village had to take a loyalty oath, which is very insulting. It's very demeaning. Did he take one? Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution is an oath, but we don't know what he's protecting it from or how he will defend it. So in 1948 and 9, the National Security Act was signed, and Congress endorsed it, although the Republican leader, Arthur Vandenberg of Michigan, said, you know, Mr. President, if you're going to get all this money for war, and there is no war, and there's no enemy on the horizon, you're going to have to scare the hell out of the American people. And Truman took on the job. The Russians were on the march. They were about to seize Greece. They were about to seize Turkey. We must stand tall. We must rearm. And all the money which should have gone to conversion, to educating the people, to health, went for war. And that's how we got into this fix. Well, one thing feeds upon the other. We now have the largest military in the history of the earth, which seems unable to win a war as well. This is, I think we call it a dichotomy. So, armed to the teeth, looking for enemies, that has been our fate since 1950, pretty much. And those who raise their voices against it are called unpatriotic, because they may want to have the Republic back. Or if we are going to have a war, at least let Congress declare it. Don't leave it to presidents, not to be trusted.
There's somebody out the front who's... I don't know yes, you might have to come in and...
I will. Thank you, Mr. Vidal. Last time I saw you was actually in Santa Monica on the day that this illegal war started. It was a pretty amazing day. It was amazing to hear you speak on that day. I was wondering, since then, do you think that there's anything that the dissenting public should have or could have done, short of acts of violence, to stop this war?
What could the public have done to keep this peculiar gang from going to war against two countries that had done us no harm and did not have the power to do us any harm? And you can't pretend that Saddam Hussein had anything to do with 9/11. I think they're going to be very embarrassed at the trial when it comes out that he had nothing to do with it. And he was just a minor dictator, tormenting his own people. Well, it's bewildering now. The normal thing we did in our history was we hold an election and you throw them out, and then you bring in better people, you hope. We don't have that luxury now. The year 2000, the year 2004, and there's Conyers' book. You should take a look at that, because he really tells what happened in this last time in Ohio. If we can't even hold the election now, because with Diebold and Triad and S&S, all these electronic machines, balloting machines, they can hack them so easily. They can sit in New York City and hack Toledo, Ohio, and switch a vote around. They had one example, I think about 4,000 or 5,000 people had come to one polling place to vote. And they checked the votes later, and not one of them voted for president. They just wanted to come and sit around the polling booth and chat and maybe vote for the odd sheriff, and then they went home. I think there's something funny going on.